Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is about, I think, 7 p.m. on Wednesday, day 3 of the BookTubeAthon. I am here with a little bit of an update as to how the week is going for me. As I suspected, I'm a little bit behind. I have not managed to complete since we're on day 3, I should be finishing book 3 today. So I finished book 1 yesterday, last night, which is Newt's Emerald by Garth Nix. This one is a sort of Georgette Heyer-esque, but like fantasy adventure story. It was really fun. It was really short, so the plot moved along really quickly in a way that was sometimes a little weird, like people would be kidnapped and then 5 pages later they'd be totally fine. But I will talk about this one more in the final wrap-up. I did also make a TBR substitution. I have subbed in Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a book of poetry that I'm doing on audiobook as my 7th book. So today I am going to try to read Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis, or at least get as far as I can. We'll see how this goes because I also have a lot of homework to do, but yeah. Let's see how the rest of the week goes, I guess. This is day 3. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is day 7 of the BookTubeAthon. I meant to do like at least every other day or every couple of days of video updates of just like letting you guys know how I was getting on. That didn't happen. Obviously, I did one quick thing on day 3 when I'd finished one book, which was Newt's Emerald. I have now finished 3 books. It is about 12:30 on day 7. So, like I said at the beginning when I was doing my TBR pile, it's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna finish 7 books. Like, I might be able to do 5. So the 3 that I've been able to complete so far, the first one is Newt's Emerald by Garth Nix. I finished this one day 2 or 3, can't remember. Anyway, this was for one of your favorite authors. The next book that I managed to finish, this one I actually didn't use for any other category, but it was Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. I switched this one in for just like the 7th book that didn't fit a category. And the reason I did it is because I did this one on audiobook and it was only 4 hours long. So I was able to basically just finish it on my commute this week, which I really appreciated because I really needed to have that time count for the challenge because otherwise there was no way I was going to finish anything this week. And then the third book that I managed to finish just, was it last night or the night before? It was All I Know Now by Carrie Hope Fletcher. This is going to have to count for 2 challenges, both a book with yellow on the cover and a book that you only discovered through BookTube. So I have 2 more that I'm gonna try to finish today, and if I do manage to finish those today, I will at least have finished the 6 challenges, so everything other than read 7 books. And so those 2 are Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. I'm about halfway through this one, and this is for Read a Book That's Older Than You because it was published in the early 1950s. I'm not totally sure how I feel about everything that's happening in this novel. Like, the main character is not, to me, the most sympathetic of main characters. Like, he's kind of an asshole, but I will reserve judgment until I finish the book because it does seem like he gets on these tracks that are really judgmental and really unfair, but then he sort of catches himself and reminds himself that he's being unfair, so I don't know. I'll wait till the end to see how I feel about it, but I'm a little over halfway through on this. I can hopefully finish this during today, like during daylight hours, because the next book that I have to read is Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, and this one I'm also about halfway through. I was reading this last night for both a book-to-movie adaptation, or book-to-TV, I'm counting it, and also a book that you read after sunset. The problem was I fell asleep while reading it last night. I was really hoping to get this done last night, but I was so tired that I just fell asleep. So if I can finish this tonight, and I can finish Lucky Jim during the day, then I will have finished 5 books, and I will have finished all of the categories except for read 7 books. So I don't think that's too bad. I'm gonna try to film another like final wrap up tomorrow when I tell you about all the books that I actually managed to finish and more of what I thought about them. So I will see you guys then. Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be the final update for the BookTubeAthon. It is now Monday about 7 p.m, so well after the challenge is over. I just wanted to give you guys sort of a last update on what I managed to complete in the week. I did manage to read 5 books, which is not quite 7, but I did manage to finish all 6 challenges other than read 7 books. So let's just go over real quick a recap of what those were. The first was Newt's Emerald by Garth Nix. This was for Read a Book by one of your favorite authors. I think this was probably my favorite of the books that I finished this week, although it was still like not fantastic. It was cute, it was fun, it was funny, but it was very rushed is really my main problem with it. And it had magic, but it was used in such a way that it was almost just like set dressing. It didn't really accomplish anything. It played very little role in the plot, and everything just kind of wrapped up really quickly. I mean, it's a book that's less than 300 pages. It was only like 260 something, so it wasn't exactly a surprise that everything wrapped up really quickly, but still it was a little bit disappointing that plot events just were sort of rushed through and there were very little consequences to anything. But it was a fun adventure slash fantasy caper kind of a story, and it was a fun like Georgette Hare pastiche just with like magic and jewelry thieving stuck in there. So the next book that I read was All I Know Now by Carrie Hope Fletcher. This is Wonderings and Reflections on Growing Up Gracefully. This is meant as like advice to her younger self, and at the time of writing this she was 22 and her audience was for like 14 or 15-year-olds, and I am 27. So this book just read really young to me in basically every way. It wasn't that it was bad, and I think that if you are in that age group that she is writing towards, you know, you would probably get a lot more out of it. I just didn't really find that I needed to hear anything that she had to say, really, which sounds bad, and I don't mean it that way. I just sort of mean that like the problems that she had while she was growing up were not really the problems that I had, and also a lot of the things that she'd figured out I've kind of already figured out just because I've already gone through that part of my life. So it was fun, and it was cute, and it was kind and caring, and it has some good advice in here if you are stuck in that, you know, haze of teenagerhood, which is kind of awful. So again, if you are in that age group that she's writing towards, you'd probably get a lot more out of it. And this one I used for the category of both read a book with yellow on the cover and read a book that you only discovered through BookTube. So the next book that I finished was on audiobook. This was Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. I did this one because it was only 4 hours long, so I was able to do it on my commute. It is a book of poetry about the author's life growing up in the sort of civil rights movements of the 60s and 70s. She talks a lot about her more personal memories, as well as... That's the dinner timer for dinner. 1 second. So she talks a lot about her personal memories of growing up in... Oh, really? Really? Is that what you think? Growing up in Ohio and South Carolina and New York, Brooklyn, and then she also mixes it in with more national movements of the civil rights movement and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and, you know, later on Angela Davis and the Black Panthers. I'm just generally speaking not a huge poetry fan, but I did enjoy the way that this story was told. Because it's told in poem form, a lot of it is just sort of flashes of memory that are just sort of captured in the moment, and I did actually really enjoy that. And it was just a really interesting look at a life and a type of family that, you know, doesn't really get written about very much. So I did enjoy that one. The next book that I finished was Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. This one I finished on Sunday at about, like 8:30 or 9 or so p.m. And this one, everyone had described this to me as funny. My problem with this book was mostly that I didn't find it funny. It was interesting, but it was deeply cynical, and the main character is deeply unhappy. He pretty much hates everyone that he's working with, and you can see why, because they're kind of preposterous people. So the basic setup of this is that he is from the north of England, so he is considered like common or low class, and he is trying to get a job as a lecturer in this university. And basically he has to like bow and scrape to these people that he does not respect at all, and he has to deal with like his boss's terrible son, and it's just sort of about his attempts to prove that he deserves to be there, even though he doesn't even really like the subject that he's teaching. He doesn't like any of his students. He doesn't like any of the people that he's working with. And it's just kind of sad in a way. I actually just found it kind of sad. It has a pretty good ending to it. It's not like it's a totally depressing downer of a book, but it was just so deeply cynical and unhappy that, I don't know, it wasn't like my favorite book. I did find it interesting though, particularly just this sort of like microcosm of university life in the 1950s, which was sort of post-World War II, and people didn't really know what society was going to be like after this war. So it was interesting, like I said, but just, I'd been told that it was going to be funny. and it really wasn't. So the last book that I have to talk about that I finished this week was Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. This was for both read a book to movie adaptation and also read a book only after sunset. Oh man, I did not like this one at all. I am disappointed about that. I found the TV show really interesting, and so I am going to keep watching the TV show. The TV show is very different from the graphic novel. I just kind of hated it. It was written in like the mid-90s, and just knowing what I know about comics publishing in the mid-90s, I wasn't expecting to love it, but it was just kind of awful. It had a lot of slurs being thrown around. It had a lot of violence that by the end just seemed to be for violence's sake. It didn't really seem to be serving the story. It had people that were like so evil and so awful in every way that it just became preposterous. Like, it wasn't believable. There was no subtlety to it. It was just like, here's these people that are completely irredeemable and they're horrible in every single way. And I'm just like, that's not really a story. So I'm gonna keep watching the show because I find the show really interesting. The show is also pretty violent, but at least in the show sometimes it's funny. Like, if you've been watching the show, I've only seen the first 2 episodes, but like the scene with Cassidy in the church with the chainsaw, you know what I'm talking about? That was kind of hard to watch, but also hilarious. The graphic novel also sort of seems like it's trying too hard, like to be like edgy and cool. Really, Kat? Because the whole premise of it is that there's this creature or force or something, it's called Genesis, and it's like the offspring of an angel and a demon. You find all this out really quickly, and basically it comes down to earth, it escapes from heaven and ends up possessing or just like going into this preacher in Texas whose name is Jesse Custer, and as this force comes into him, he ends up sort of like exploding, or there's this giant explosion of energy and his whole congregation gets blown up, but it's fine because he hated all of them anyway. And then basically he ends up getting the power to just like command people to do things, and it's considered like the word of God. And then he decides to go like on a road trip to search for God. Anyway, so the show already, I can tell, is moving a lot slower, because for one thing, when the force like possesses him, there's no explosion, and so the people of the town that he is preaching for are still alive, and so it's a lot slower and it's a little bit more subtle, and the portrayal of Tulip is a lot more nuanced and interesting. Tulip is his ex-girlfriend. The main characters are the same, so it's Jesse Custer, the preacher, Tulip, his ex-girlfriend, and Cassidy, a like 100-and-so-year-old vampire who's Irish also. But the just sort of pacing and setup, while they have similar elements, seem to be going in different ways. And so I'm really interested to see what the show does, because I'm not gonna keep reading the graphic novel. I just didn't like that. Hi, cat. So that was all of the books that I managed to read in BookTubeAthon. The other 2 that I really wanted to get to that I was sad that I didn't were The Winter's Kiss by Maria Rutkoski and The Girl of Ink and Stars by Karen Millwood Hargrave. This one, since I'm already about halfway through it, I think I'm gonna still try to finish this month, so we'll see how that goes. Last year I was able to finish all 7 books as well as like do almost daily video updates, but I just had so much going on that I sort of knew going in that I wasn't gonna be able to finish 7 books. I'm still, however, pretty proud that I got through 5 in a week while still, you know, working full-time and having school and everything else that I had to do. So that is going to be it for my 2016 BookTubeAthon wrap up. I will see you guys very soon with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.